what about this notion of, well, we are not doing enough in the never forget realm when it comes to nuclear annihilation or just devastation? I don't think the world will go on just fine. I mean, there'll be a planet here, but life. And
sorry, when you say that, there will be a sphere here. There will be life form. There will be life
cockroaches and tardigrades.
See, I know where you're going because we always have the same
hashtag
conversation.
tardigrades. But tell me, what could we do to? And then, obviously, my follow-up question is going to be: was there an analog for COVID?
I've changed my mind about this. I called it about as cleanly as somebody can call it, and then it happened, and then we denied that it was coming out of the Wuhan Institute of Virology. And we're also denying that we are trying to corner a conventional enemy who also possesses unconventional weapons, which, pardon my French, but this is just the dumbest thing I can imagine. All the same people who said that Putin would never invade Ukraine are right here telling us exactly why this is safe, which it isn't. This is the end. We're on borrowed time, and we're not going to avoid this. We don't have the right leaders. This just doesn't make any sense. And the reason it doesn't make any sense is because people need to be so proximate to the problem that it plays on their mind and they can't think about anything else. And so let's assume for the moment that this is some sort of biological weapons convention workaround that may have spilled over through a wet market or something like that. And then we're in Ukraine and we're not allowed to question why we are going to higher and higher levels of escalation. Now, I don't know about you, but almost all of my ancestors came from Ukraine. And if you ask Jews, Ashkenazi Jews, about where they came from in that region, they usually say something like the following: well, it's a little region that sometimes was Poland, and sometimes it was Lithuania, and sometimes it was Ukraine, and sometimes it was Russia, and sometimes it was Belarusian. We cannot afford to have these borders oscillate as they have always oscillated. In fact, they didn't oscillate. If you look at a time lapse, much after World War II, up until the fall of the Berlin Wall, because of the specter of nuclear annihilation. And I will point out that Teller famously came from the Lutheran Gymnasium in Budapest with Laszlo Ratz as his high school math teacher.
And Szilard.
And with Szilard and von Neumann, and like the world's greatest secondary
high school.
The world's greatest high school. No,
JV team. Yeah.
Give it up for the Lutheran Gymnasium. And then Stan Ulam came from a town which I'm now forced to call Lviv, which I think I always grew up saying something closer to Lvov. And that is a Polish town in northeastern Ukraine, where Ukrainians are fighting like 8 seconds by hypersonic missile to the border in Poland. So I'm not supposed to say I called it, but we're insane. I mean, just the twin nuclei problem within the space of the time that I was talking about it, we're facing potential absolute cataclysms. And we're now funding more EcoHealth Alliance. We're trying to figure out if we should be sending planes after sending tanks into Ukraine. We're not supposed to discuss it. Nobody knows what's going on. I don't know what we're doing, but I do know that we're playing Russian roulette, and we're not going to be surviving this if we keep playing this every time somebody wants to change a border in Central and Eastern Europe.
And just, lingering on that one moment longer, thinking about in our community, in the Jewish community, every single Jewish community, San Diego, Los Angeles, Washington, D.C., there is some tribute to the Holocaust, or, there's some memorial to the Holocaust. Bigger ones, smaller ones. Washington, D.C. and L.A. are two notable ones. And then, of course, in Israel at Yad Vashem. I was thinking of, kind of getting your take on it. We have one Hiroshima, and there's one Nagasaki, and those are the two places. There's places. I mean, here in San Diego, we actually have a Peace Garden and in Japanese, but there's nothing as visceral as if you've been to any of these Holocaust memorials. I've only been to Yad Vashem. Actually, I should come to see.
Yad Vashem is powerful, but it's not. I wouldn't put it in my top 5.
Yeah, so that's a lacuna in my Jewish journey. But at any rate, why don't we kind of stigmatize, and not about the morality? I think it was ultimately moral, and it was a good decision by Truman. But ultimately, if we had more awareness, you've called for with deadly seriousness, the resumption of tests,
Nobody listens.
the resumptions of above ground,
Rare
and controlled and moderate, but to bring to a visceral sense the notion of what we're playing with literal atomic fire.
The two monuments that I would recommend above all others to those lost in the Holocaust, or maybe three. Okay, so the Berlin Memorial, I can't even explain it. It's basically these stones, these pillars, and they start off very shallow. You could have a picnic on one, and you wander into this thing, and the height just gets higher and higher and higher, and it's mind-numbing, and you lose all perspective as to where you are, and you start to realize what happens when life is devalued and degraded, and all you see is the cold, austere stones. It is... Who thought it reminds me of Bohemian Rhapsody. It made sense to Freddie Mercury to write this thing, but if you describe it, let's write a really long song that mimics several operas that makes no sense. I would never have greenlit this project because I'm an idiot, right? Mm-hmm. The next one is Babi Yar. Go to Kiev and try to keep yourself from feeling the sickness of standing near this ditch where people were just machine gunned and executed. It's a visceral thing that will cause you to lose your shit. And I guess the last one that really matters to me, which isn't even about Jews, is there's an amazing sculpture of a boxing ring on an angle. And it's to the Sinti, which is sort of a Roma community boxing legend named Johannes Trollmann, who was very popular in German circles as a great boxing legend. He sort of was using the Muhammad Ali technique of being highly athletic rather than just large and powerful. And he was very good looking, swarthy complexion. And he fought in Germany, and the Nazis took there was a decision against him, and the crowd was having none of it because they knew boxing. So the Germans... the Nazis were faced with the idea that this was not going down. And so they said, okay, we're going to change the rules to neutralize this guy's style. So he divorces his wife to save her life. I mean, it's hard not to get emotional about this. He covers himself, his dark skin, with flour to mock the Aryan preoccupation with purity. And he loses. And this guy gets sent to a camp, and they're using him to train other people and put on exhibitions, and finally they can't take it anymore. And I think that they just forget whether he got a hoe in the back of his head or a single bullet. But it took us until recently to reinstate his boxing championship that was taken away from him. I'd go to those three memorials, see how you do. But my point is, it won't last.
It'll wear off. The treadmill of hedonic.
If you've ever had a near-death experience for like 2 weeks,
you're
every cup of water is when Warren Zevon was dying, I think David Letterman asked him, is there any message in this? You know that you're about to die. You've had this incredible canon of songs that you've written and performed. Is there any lesson? And Warren Zevon said, enjoy every sandwich. And, sandwich is a funny word. And it's a deadly serious point, which is you don't appreciate just the sheer joy of being alive because you can't. There's no way to keep these lessons in mind. We're not going to explode it above. I mean, it's the smart thing to do, right. But everyone's going to say, well, you're going to contaminate the atmosphere. It's like, and then you're going to get on to the next thing, and you're not going to think about it. And it reminds me of in New Orleans when Katrina hit and the levee broke. And I remember somebody on TV saying, who could possibly imagine that the levee would break? And I thought, didn't Led Zeppelin sing a song called When the Levee Breaks?
It's what they do, yeah.
I mean, it's just, I don't understand it. But I've come to accept that most humans cannot live with abstract knowledge. If something hasn't happened in 20 years, it's not going to happen. If it's never happened, then you never need to worry about anything that's a low probability, doesn't need to be thought about in the context of expected value.
I think you're exactly right.